Hi, everyone. My name is Teresa Marr, and I am a coach, and I'm a founding member of the Together in the Asian Women Coaching Collective, AWCC for short. In fact, several folks on the call are also from AWCC. We are a new SASE partner. We've been around for 1 year, and we are hosting this portion of the session for Focus Circles. So Focus Circles was the most popular segment of last year's inaugural conference, and we're so excited to bring it back and host as well. So a little bit about our agenda today. We're going to talk a little bit more about AWCC, so you're all familiar with it and what our mission is. And then we'll talk about what the objectives and goals are for Focus Circles in general. We'll tell a little bit more about who's facilitating, where is everyone coming from, and then we'll go into the specifics of how to actually facilitate a focus circle and the guidelines and the discussion topics that we have primed for you all as suggestions, although you don't have to stick with them if you don't want, let the conversation flow. And a couple things to avoid. And then we'll go over session logistics, and then we'll do Q&A. So because there's so much information, I will be pausing at different parts of our conversation and inviting questions for that segment. So that is our agenda for today. So a little bit about Asian Women Coaching Collective, AWCC for short. We are a nonprofit of 20 to 30 and growing Asian women coaches. As a community of diverse Asian women coaches, we convene to empower and transform the experience of Asian women leaders and ourselves as coaches in the workplace, at home, and within our communities. And we strive to sustain high performance and live a purposeful and congruent life. And so we're really excited to host the Focus Circles portion today because we want to be in community with other API women and facilitate these powerful questions and conversations, since that is what we're naturally trained to do as hosts. And for context, we make up about half of the facilitators on the list, and then the other half is coming from SASE amazing ERG partners across several different companies. So let's go into the Focus Circles objectives and goals. So the real goal here is to make sure that everyone participating in the session has a voice that they can share and elevate, and it can be heard in a psychologically safe and emotionally safe space. And so we want to facilitate connection, belonging, and all that good stuff. And how we want to do this is to really have a small group as possible. That's why we recruited so many facilitators, so that people can feel that opportunity to speak up and really connect with others. And usually that happens in smaller groups. And we really want people to be able to talk about what's on their mind, what they're learning during the summit, learn from each other, and really just be in community, because there's so much shared experience that people have amongst each other. And so our goal really is to develop this support network for people to share their experience, their learnings, and all this, and really develop that sense of belonging. So some facilitator fun facts. We have about 46 or so facilitators from 13 companies and partner organizations. Of course, AWCC. Then we have a lot of other companies represented, like Accenture, BP, Dow, GE, Google, Boeing, Thermo Fisher, et cetera. So we have a lot of different companies joining. So thank you all for joining and participating. And ethnicities represented amongst our amazing facilitators: Chinese, Indian, Vietnamese, Japanese, Korean, Filipino, Sri Lankan, plus a few blends. So we're pretty diverse set of the Asian ethnicities. So it's pretty exciting. So this is a lot of information, but these are all the names of the people signed up as of today to facilitate. And on the left, you have the AWCC folks, and we also have some friends of AWCC that are there as well. So they may not be part of AWCC, but they're also trained facilitators or coaches, and we've invited them to come along. And then on the right, we have all the ERGs. So then you can see everyone that's coming. I'm going to be sending out these slides so you can see, and then I'll also next week be sending a more detailed list where you're like, in what groups are you in, what's the Zoom links, and all that good stuff. So you'll get more information, but you can just see who's coming from your company or from your organization here. Okay, so going into facilitator guidelines. First, we want to make sure you could consider that this is a really psychologically safe space for API women to get together. And, the really important thing is that you're authentic, candid, genuine. Okay, thanks, Wendy. We'll make sure to add that in. And we'll please help to make sure this is a no judgment zone, because especially API women, they sometimes have challenges speaking up their mind or, like owning their truth and their experiences. So no judgment, just, supporting each other, things like that. And we do welcome that you connect with people in your group after the session's concluded, whether that's like in LinkedIn, maybe you have a meetup after, because these groups can definitely persist after the session as well. And the session will not be recorded. So in the purposes of making sure this is psychologically safe and all that. So, these are discussion groups. And we encourage you to have your video on. And this helps people to meet you, understand who you are, and like have that connection to facilitate. How to facilitate focus circles. So what does an actual focus circle look like? So we're keeping it pretty broad, but there's a specific way you could kick it off, and then you just kind of let it flow after that. So first, you kick off the session by introducing yourself as a facilitator, starting with your own intro, your name, your years in the US, your company name, citizenship status, things like that, if you want. And then you really have everyone go around the room and do their own intros as well. And the important thing is to really encourage everyone to put their LinkedIn profile link immediately into the chat in the very beginning, so people can start linking up with each other and making sure they can have relationships that persist after the focus circle is over. So you can also make sure to encourage people to use chat, and so that they can comment and share their story. And then after you do the introductions, you really start kicking off the conversation by actually sharing, start prompting either a topic that you've heard about, read about, or a topic that we have suggested on the next list. Or maybe you want to start with a personal story. And this is kind of the social grease to get the rest of the conversation going, really. And you being authentic and being out there sets the tone for others to be genuine. And after that, what we're hoping is that the conversation just kind of everyone latches on to that and takes off. And so after that, really, it's about you facilitating the conversation and making sure the conversation is flowing. So, allowing people to comment on the story, popcorning around the room to make sure everyone's voice is heard, making sure anyone who's not speaking up has a chance to be invited into their circle. And those that may be more vocal, inviting them to step back and allow others who may have not had a chance to speak. And let the conversation build organically. And, if one topic runs out and there's like an awkward silence or things like that, then you could definitely fill it in with, something that someone has said in the session, or then go to a discussion topic that we're going to share with you on the next list, or we're going to share a list with you on the next slide. And we're going to notify you when there's 2 minutes left, and thank everyone for their time, and start kind of wrapping up the conversation. And then, with Zoom rooms is a hard cutoff. And so, it will just close. So sessions are, okay, I'm getting a question here. So sessions are 55 minutes long. How many participants are we expecting per group? It's a great question. So the sessions are 45 minutes each, but we are asking all the facilitators to sign in 10 minutes prior, which makes your obligation 55 minutes. And how many participants are we expecting per group? Around 6 to 8. So we would love it to be as small as possible, but we also know, it's going to vary on who's attending, but I think we're at 6 to 8, right, Parag, when we did the math? Yeah.
Yes, and I know 45 minutes may sound long. Last year, 30 minutes was way too short. And we even allowed folks to go into the break period and extend through the breaks. And even then, 40 minutes was too short. So for those of you who were present last year facilitating, you probably know firsthand that they were vibrant discussions and very needed. And so much has definitely happened within the past year. I can't imagine that folks won't be using these as outlets as well. And so creating that safe space, what I heard was incredible. I didn't go into one. I really wanted to reserve that for Asian women. So yeah. By the way, for those that don't know me, I'm Parag Matawar. I'm the Director of Professional Programs, and I can't say enough about how wonderful Teresa and the AWCC has been here. So I've been working with us this year. So hopefully we don't scare you away with this experience, and there is a long relationship to come. So I'll shut up now.
No, yeah, thank you so much. It's actually been super exciting. This is our first, we've been around for a year, and it's our first formal, I would say, partnership event that has manifested so far. We're having conversations with other partner organizations as well. And if we're coming out with a bang, right? We have 20 folks coming to facilitate. We also have four speakers out of the 9. So we're super excited. We have one on here, Sohi, for example. So it's really cool. All right. Yeah, and we have our Mo here on the call, who's one of the 2 women who actually started AWCC. So just definitely commenting that this is a great way for us to give back to the community and also get involved. So we want to break outside of our coaching circles and figure out how can we get out into the community. And this was a great opportunity. So thank you. All right. So let's move on to discussion topics. So these are mainly the discussion topics that we had from last year already. And we're just putting it out there as a guide. There, by no means do you have to stick with these or anything like that. But if you're like, what should I talk about? Here are some suggestions. You can also consider, if some of you are attending the event, or if you may want to consider curating topics that you might find interesting if you are attending a couple of sessions beforehand and something comes up, or something comes up in your personal life, things like that. But generally, some of the discussion topics are, microaggressions among Asian women that we face, and how do we survive as API women in corporate America? Feeling like we're doing twice the amount of work, but like getting paid half. How do we have this culture belonging kind of identity clash where we have Americans seeing us as Asian, or Asians seeing us as Americans, not really fitting in both sides, and code switching between the 2 cultures and things like that. And then also Asian hate and COVID influenced biases are a big topic right now for Asian women, with all the Asian hate and crimes against Asian women. So these are things that we welcome you to consider. And also, I'd love to hear if there's any other topics that come to your mind. Feel free to put it in the chat or say it out loud, and I can add this speaker notes for people who want to look on the slides and have more to talk about. Or did we nail it?
I guess this is probably related to cultural identity, but there is that at least East Asian culture of Confucianism, and it's about you don't stick your neck out, and it's all about harmony. So then it's very much, there's this huge thing about being selfish is bad, right? Anything that's seen as even remotely close to selfish is bad, and that also you don't want to disrupt a piece that your individualism is not as important as collectivism. So I think that's related in cultural identity, but I just want to call that out because I think at least in my coaching and in my own life, I've noticed that a lot of people don't speak up when they really should because of these heavily ingrained things in their minds.
Yes. +1 to that, this whole challenge around let me focus on everyone else and not myself, the good for the group versus myself. And then there's a lot of challenges that come along with that in many different ways. So definitely +1 to that. And then people are sending more. Aditi, you have another topic? So I'm going to add that to the list.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, basically, one thing that I've seen is that as Asian women, a lot of times expectations by those, mainstream Americans is that, we just have to agree with, especially for, American men, that we just have to agree with what they say. And when we do not agree, let's say even in a business setting with their point of view, or we have a different one, it is, you can see that little bit of discomfort that they might face. And it makes, at least in my case, it makes me uncomfortable because my goal wasn't to make them uncomfortable at all. I'm just expressing what I think. Or if I don't agree with them, I will state that very nicely, respectfully. So that's something that I've also seen happen.
Yeah, like actually speaking up for your mind and not just going along with whatever the power dynamics are in the room. Like that's surprising to people and sometimes uncomfortable. So definitely agree. Okay, I'm noting these down.
Yeah.
And then did someone else have another topic? Let's see here. Wondering if there are more positive topics, how to draw from our strengths as API women to influence. Thank you, Mo. You want to say a little bit more about that?
Sure. I was reading these 6 topics and they seem very big challenges, right? And so I'm, kind of drawing from some of the positive intelligence stuff I've been doing in coaching to say, okay, like, how do we move from negative emotions to more positive so that we're not continuously sabotaging ourselves, but really drawing from our strengths to move the needle at work. So that's kind of the thought. I'm sure others may have different spins. Like, I think for every one of these cards here, there's probably like a flip side to it, right? And so how do we want to make sure that when we present these, that it is positive as well? And then the other topic I put in here, which is about more of, managing 3-generation households. I think many of us culturally do have 3 generations living with us. So, maybe that's something that would be interesting to folks.
Oh, yes. I like that. Yeah, I do see the challenges here. I would like to invite this group to come up with another, like in addition to Mo's positive kind of switching, like what are our strengths? What can we bring to the table? What other types of positive conversation topics can we have? Because maybe we can mix it up, like some challenges, but also some like their strength in API women.
Oh, Teresa, if I may, I know the next slide is probably the session 2 discussion topics. I wonder if the session 1, the first round, is really the exhale in a sense, right? Just the let it all out, the things that are obviously it's not going to happen in 45 minutes for everybody to let everything out, but the sentiment of being heard, sharing frustrations, those types of things. And then session 2, where we migrate to, if you want to flip to it real quick, I apologize if this disrupts your flow, but where we were going with session 2 was what your takeaways are from the day, which should be inherently more positive and uplifting, because ideally you've learned something through those 3 workshops and really building off of that. And so you leave on a really good note without losing the opportunity to vet. Does that Mo, does that kind of cover what you're thinking?
Parag, I think that's fantastic, because one of the things I was thinking is I'm not sure of the context in terms of if this is the first time people are getting together, and for a lot of them it might be. And I think that it would be a big miss if we don't just exhale, to your point, and say, listen, like, we've all been through a lot, whether we're Asian or API or whatever that is. Let's just address and acknowledge that we've gone through so much change. And what does that look like? What has that felt like? How did we get through some of these challenges? And however people bring up those topics of their own personal challenges, like, let's go there where the energy is. And then I think that is a great segue into, like, okay, some of these other discussion topics. So what are the strengths that we have? How resilient are we? And, or let's talk about microaggressions, because I think what I've seen in the clients that I've worked with is we have to acknowledge the elephant in the room, that people, for many, it's the first time they're getting together. It's the first time they can actually say, we've been through a lot, and we still continue to, with the larger context of everything that's going on. So.
I like that. And to add to that, oh yeah, Mo, feedback on that?
Oh, I no, thanks for the opportunity. I think it's more of like, you're so right that people come in from different places, right? And so because this is just one big room and then people are randomly assigned versus like, hey, choose your topic. We'll see where it goes, but just +1 to what Sohi already said. And if there is a way, if to continue the conversation, because we're also very action oriented, I feel, as, you know, engineers and scientists. And so it's like we come in with like a hypothesis, scientific method, and so now how do we apply it? You know, so I'm sure people are going to be itching to be like, okay, I don't want to talk about it anymore. I want to experiment. I want to do something. And so how do we even end this? And maybe this is what part of the you know, training is going to be, is like, how do we close our sessions with our groups so that they can take that next step to action?
Yeah. So on that point, Dorothy pinged in a really great piece of feedback. And obviously us as coaches having powerful questions, I'm going to take this as an action item offline to connect with the AWCC facilitators that I signed up and see if we can crowdsource a list of powerful questions that kind of go off of this conversation that we're having, off the discussion topics, off the goals of the event. And then I'm going to send this out to everyone, you know, also in the ERGs and everyone else to like also benefit from. You don't have to use it, but this is powerful questions are really open-ended questions that spark thinking, creativity, looking at things differently. And so it may be helpful to do that. So thank you for that suggestion, and let's do that. Okay. I will be in touch with that next week. All right, everyone.
Dorothy's raising her hand too. Go ahead.
Hi. So one of the most powerful closing, or I shouldn't say it was closing, but it was a good coda for one of the workshops I did that I was a participant in, was for everyone to pick to name a big, hairy, audacious goal, and to name one thing they will do to move toward it. And I think that one of the things I see like in the chat is that, especially in working in tech or anything STEM, there's this huge propensity to solve. So the more coachy we can be about not trying to solve or not having them come up with, you know, different ways of doing things, but to really stretch them so they can show up to their roles the next day with a totally different mindset.
Yeah.
Start of a mindset. Because otherwise, I headed, like, I was one of the board members of the Microsoft Women's ERG, and I just find that people want to do the networking, but they don't really know what that means. And I think that a lot of this type of workshop is about self-work, and that the natural affinity will come out of that work, but encouraging them to be a little bit more risk-taking and vulnerable about thinking bigger in their own lives can actually pay off in a lot of the networking down the road. So
yeah, so Dorothy, I actually think that would be a great closing question as part of the second session, right? Where we have share 3 takeaways and what you learn. And then at the end, if we can all kind of drive, all the facilitators driving towards, like, you know, name that big goal coming out of the summit, like, you know, or the conference, and what's one action that you'll commit to. And then now this person has committed it to their group, and now you're all connecting to LinkedIn. Maybe, you know, you check in with each other after or something like that. Yeah. Parag, I feel like you want to say something or no?
I do, and I'm like, well, not wanting to overcomplicate things and add more work, but at the same time, it's like, oh, is this a missed opportunity to somehow figure out? And it's not missed yet because we've still got 8 days or whatever, but to somehow walk away from this conference with small groups that I don't want to use the term lean in circle because I think everybody's tired of that term, but kind of a lean in circle where people feel comfortable checking in some way, shape, or form. Maybe the individual groups in the session too, maybe they choose to create a LinkedIn group or whatever just to chat and keep in touch or something. But I almost wonder if, and I don't think we can pull this off by next Friday unless somebody has a brilliant idea.
I think so. Actually, that's one thing that I've been a part of, and like sometimes it just happens organically in different discussions. You can just set up a WhatsApp group and just have people to like join it as they want. So I think what each facilitator could do is that they could just set up their own WhatsApp group that people can just join if they choose to, or some other, you know. And I think maybe I think LinkedIn, because there's so much on it, and I feel like the mentality for LinkedIn, for me at least, and I know others, is that, oh, like you look for jobs on there, you don't want to share these sensitive things. So it's better to have like a WhatsApp or like a Signal, group instead, so that people do feel like they can talk more openly.
And I do want to, yes, I like that, Wendy. And also I do want to recognize that the facilitators may not have signed up for that. So I think something to consider is, yes, the facilitators can also say, would someone in the group like to take that on, right? Like if they don't want to do it or can't, or, commit to that, and that's totally okay. But it's kind of inviting it to the group. And if the other people in the group feel passionate about, they can take that action item because they have the LinkedIn, and also like it's their community, right? And when you create community and the community is involved in creating the community, that's the most empowering thing anyway. And so if there are no takers to foster this group after, then you could also just let it be. So you're not forcing something, right? That maybe doesn't need to be forced then, or maybe, that group was, it was just meant to be for that moment, right? So I just want to offer that up as a solution, but I will put this into our notes so we can help you for session 2. Okay, and then I feel like Dorothy, you still have another hand raised, or no? Okay, I know it's like hard to erase the hand sometimes. I feel like I raised my hand before and it doesn't go away. Okay.
They need a host unraise.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I didn't expect to have such an amazing, productive conversation, but like really harnessing all of your minds and brains and experience. It's really great in making this even better. So we're taking notes. I took notes on this, and we had to add the action item of the powerful questions to update the session 2 specifics for the, goals, maybe creating the community after. And also I'm going to be saving the notes in the chat and then sharing out the key takeaways there. So again, everyone's coming at this a little differently. So we welcome you to do whatever it is you feel as you want to do in your session. It's your session. So that's the other thing. Okay. Okay. So some questions here for logistics is Allison wrote, will our groups be assigned based on location? No, it will not be. But you may want to check in if if the topic that you want to talk about, such as Asian hate, is relevant for your audience. We are assigning it. It's more random, and we're doing it. I'm going to get into this in a little bit. We're going to be doing it by like last name, A through L, that kind of stuff like that. And then there's just random assignments. So you may just want to do a pulse check in the room on, on a topic that you may want to talk about, and make sure like that's something that's relevant to folks. Okay. So I want to flip to allies. We actually have a third. This is the first year we're doing ally circles, and we are having a third room for session 1 only for an ally track. So I want to explain what this is, and this is going to be relevant to some AWCC coaches that I will be assigning after this session. So for those selected, you will stay posted. But essentially, we have a half-day ally track where we have about 25 or 30 allies registered, whereas the half-day session, they only attend the half-day. They attend the keynote, they attend one specific workshop track, and then they attend two tracks.
My fault. I thought you were going to say one session. It is 2 workshops, 1 track. You've got it right. My apologies.
Oh, okay. 2 session, 1 track. And then they're also going to attend a ally-specific focus circle. And that focus circle, we created the track in general for allies because several participants gave the feedback that they would really benefit from additional ally support. It's like you can uplift yourself, but also you need the allies around you that have the power and the authority to then help, work with you on this, right? And so the ally track will happen during session 1, like I said, and these ally circles will be facilitated by AWCC coaches, since they might benefit from more specific facilitation expertise as an ally and not being an API woman themselves. And so I'm going to reach out to the handful of those assigned and, let you know. And here are some conversations we came up with. I actually welcome more ideas if this is our first time doing it. So if there are other conversations that you think are appropriate for allies, I'd love to add them to our list. But essentially, we had some around like how to speak up when you see microaggressions, push back against common stereotypes, and how can you actually sponsor and advocate for API women in growing their career, right? A sponsor is very important for these types of situations and needs for API women. And also Asian hate may be a topic that people want to talk about. And so that's something that we want to put out there. So I want to pause here and see if there's anything else that you think that allies could be talking about, let's just say.
I think also allies, not just for Asian Americans, but also for other underrepresented groups. Because I think, when we rise, we all, like when one rises, we all rise together. So that's one area too that I think would be really helpful. It just creates for a better workplace.
Okay. Yeah. I agree. I think like the tricky thing that I found, especially for I used to do diversity and inclusion for a few years at Google, and Asians are ignored from that topic. So I feel like whenever people are been trained already today to speak up on microaggressions and common stereotypes, they actually have not included Asians into the conversation. I even try to raise this and people are like, no, Asians are like the second most populous population in tech, so we're not going to go there. And then there's women, right? But the intersection of Asian and women it has been something that people don't think about necessarily as like a demographic to go on. So I definitely agree, Wendy. And I also think it may be okay in this meeting, in this session, to be like API women, just given the fact that like no one ever really thinks about this group as a type of group in diversity that needs this extra attention.
Yeah, I think in both medicine and tech, Asians could potentially be overrepresented in the professions, but underrepresented in leadership. And I think as a result are often left out of training opportunities or considerations. And it's something that since George Floyd's murder, I've been lifting up my voice to highlight this and, underscore it's not a oppression Olympics, right? We want to lift up everybody. But Asians often get left out.
Yes. And I even raised this even internally and no one listened. Like exactly Monsi saying, yeah, like research shows people think Asians are far more represented in leadership than we actually are. And that's even why we're doing this summit, this conference to begin with. I keep saying summit, I have my work hat on, but we're doing it because we face a double glass ceiling, right? We have the glass ceiling, the bamboo ceiling, whatever other things we have. And so I do want to respect the fact that we are one of many other demographics that are challenged in the workplace. So how can we make sure to bring others along? So how can we do that in a way that like puts the spotlight on us, but also make sure that we don't forget others as we lift ourselves up.
Teresa, maybe a topic around building solidarity could be a way to address that.
Can you say a little more about what that means and what that could look like?
Well, when you just said that, we get overlooked and forgotten as a community because of all these myths or fictions about how well represented we are in leadership and also some biases. So I recently read research about how something like 92% of Americans said that they are comfortable having Asian Americans be their doctor or their teacher, but that figure plummets like to how uncomfortable they would be having Asian Americans as a boss, and then plummets further having Asian American as a president. So, I think you're right in terms of this focus on us as a community and what we deal with, and how do we build solidarity and connection with other communities. That I think that's a big topic because there's so much history there, with how a lot of the benefits that we as a community have been earned by the civil rights struggle and by struggles that other communities have undergone. And then some of the successes that we've had have not been shared in the same way by those communities, and how the model minority myth is kind of a wedge issue, all of that stuff. what are we as a community doing to build those connections? It's not a small topic.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth touching on for sure. You know?
Yeah. And that research you cited is really interesting. And yeah, Dorothy also has a suggestion for Dr. Denise Lopez. So yeah, I don't think a lot of people know this, right? And so surfacing these type of things to the allies are going to be really helpful. And hopefully they will have that surface for them a little bit more in their session workshops, right? Parag, like this kind of information should be being percolated to them there as well. So sounds good. Can you send a link to the survey? Which survey are you referring to?
The stats that she just shared about,
Okay.
yeah, how many Asians, you know, would they like have an Asian boss or an Asian as a president?
I'll look that up. I'll see if I can find it and just plop it in the chat right now.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that would be great. Yeah, and also one of our own AWCC members, Yan Na, is going to be doing a session, one of the workshop sessions on her research for API leadership and women in leadership. And there's even more research that to add to the body of work. So it's already peer reviewed and published, and she's going to be presenting on that as one of her tracks. So a shameless plug to attend the summit or the conference if you haven't already signed up. I think we only have 10 people signed up. Is that right, Parag? From the facilitators group, but feel free to sign up for the conference. And I'll get to that in a bit. So thank you everyone so much. I feel like we're already having a mini focus circle and it's actually amazing. And I feel very uplifted and empowered by all of you here. So, and learning from all of you.
For those folks who do actually end up in the ally focus circles, be aware that for whatever reason, like half of the ally registrants so far are actually Asian women, and I have no idea why, but I'm trying to go back to companies and say, hey, that's fine, but we were hoping to get, all the white men in there, to put it bluntly. But it's, we'll roll with it. I just want you to be prepared mentally if you see that, hey, this focus circle has a bunch of has a pretty big mix in it. I'll be coordinating that focus circle with you, so I'll give you the heads up in advance.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and the numbers, we're still working on the numbers, but even though we have 25 or so purchase tickets, not everyone has registered yet. So we're going to have to be super fluid and just roll with it. But anyway, in any case, this is a great conversation for us to bring back to our own orgs and leaders, and kind of advocate for Asian women in leadership as well. So, okay. So, let's see here. I already covered this, right? Where we want people to do the 3 takeaways. And we really want to keep this as like hey, this is the very end of the day. This is going to be pretty much the last session before the closing remarks, like that only go on for like another 10 minutes or so. So we are also offering, Parag, maybe you could talk about the giveaway that we're doing. That might be helpful here too.
Yeah, so it's a long day. And we were told last year, hey, it's a really long day, but don't snip anything out of it because it was really good. So we don't know if Zoom fatigue is going to erode against that. I imagine it would. So I know we're going to have some drop off toward the end. So we are doing a couple of SPA certificates to encourage people to stick around. And will be $200 gift certificates basically, and depending on whoever actually logs into the closing session, those are the folks who are eligible, and will spin a wheel or something to give those away. So hopefully that will be an enticement of some sort. So that's our plan.
Yeah. Last year, Parag, you're saying that we had a very high retention rate all the way to the end of the event, but that was last June. It's 1 year later, 2 years into the pandemic and things like that. So I think the general drop-off rate is now it's only like 20 or 30% retention by the end of the event, right? So we're trying to bump that up. So just, be aware that we may have even smaller groups. If, we have a little bit less amount of facilitators for the second set, we have only 35. And then we may have a smaller group, but, even having a group of 2 or 3, like, it's easier and, deeper conversations than a group of 8. So we welcome that. And it's going to be a benefit either way. So, and yeah, we'll take care of all the logistics and things, but just so for you all to know that that's what we're trying to do to retain the attendance all the way through to the last. We also saved it for the end because we also know people love to network. So it's almost like a networking kind of event and a way for people to just connect and, chat with each other and share, cross-pollinate ideas and all that good stuff. Okay. All right, so let's move on to some things to avoid. Just a couple of things. One is dominating the conversation. So as a facilitator, your job is to facilitate the conversation amongst the rest of the participants and the attendees. And so you are not really involved in the conversation as much as you are trying to elevate and making sure everyone else can have a conversation and that their voices are heard. So your main role really at the beginning of the talk the most talking you'll do is generally at the beginning, where you have the intros and you're kind of kicking it off and you start off with the story. And then after that, it's really about sitting back and letting the magic happen and the connections happen. So at that point, what you're really there to do is to make sure the conversation is flowing, people are talking, people have enough airspace and not too much and not too little, essentially. And so just a caveat is, I think a couple of feedbacks last year was like, my facilitator did talk a lot, like a little bit too much, right? And so it didn't allow me to speak. So every time you speak, just consider when you're speaking, right? What is the goal of you speaking and what may that be taking away from someone else, right? So if it's silent and you're trying to jumpstart the conversation again, then that's okay. But if it's like other people are trying to speak and you're kind of being like one of the attendees, that's not what you're here to do. So I just want to throw that out there because we can get so excited and connect with our community and resonate with them, but we have to know that we have a role of facilitators to sit back. And then 2, I've already covered this with the AWCC coaches, but a lot of us have our own coaching businesses, but we're not here for lead generation. This is for community and authenticity and connection. So really, everyone will have a facilitator page, which I will get to in a moment. And that's where your bio and headshots go. And that's where people will look you up after, or if you connect on LinkedIn. So you can continue the connections later, but for the purposes of this meeting, this session, you're really about, you can introduce yourself as a host and facilitator and say you're a coach with AWCC and really leave it at that and just focus on facilitation. So I want to pause here for a moment and see if anyone had questions on the things to avoid or other things to avoid that we may not have listed that it may come to your mind that we should consider.
Yeah, Teresa, I think we will also, you and I, at least as the, and Shruti Bahadur, as the overall coordinators of the focus circles themselves, will also be giving you a shout out for the AWCC coaches in particular, saying, hey, we've got about half the folks in the room are facilitators, are coaches in their, either full time or on the, or on the side. So, we'll figure out the right words to at least give you a shout out as well as point people to the facilitator section of the website so that they can look you up if that is something of primary interest for you.
Yeah, that's great. That's music to Mo's ears as well, since we're trying to get our name out there in the community and we just want to, let people know that we're here as a resource for them and all that. So that's good. All right. So it seems like no other questions. So let's go over into logistics. So I've already alluded to this, but, running over this quickly and you'll get this information after. There are 2 sessions in Eastern time, 1 o'clock to 1:45, with you signing in 10 minutes earlier. And then at session 2 at the very end of the day, is 5:10 to 5:55 Eastern, and then you sign in 10 minutes before. And for your Zoom settings, we would like you to please follow this format where you have the name and then you have a slash and then you put your company and then a slash and then write the word facilitator so people know that you are the facilitator as you have the conversations. And then Zoom background. You are welcome to do it. You're not required to. You can keep your own background. You can put in a Zoom background if you want. We have custom backgrounds, about 6 of them or so. You can find, if you're registered, you can find them on the conference site welcome tab. You can find it on the public website page for this, but there's only one Zoom background there, or this Drive folder. So if you click on the Drive folder, everyone who has the link can access it and you can download it. And I will remind you about this next time as well. And we're going to have the 2 to 3 rooms per session, 3 rooms for the first session because it has allies, and then 2 rooms for the second because we're not going to have allies joining for the rest of the day. And for the focus circle, room 1 with the attendees last names A through L is going to be moderated by Shruti, who's from Dow. And then I will be doing the focus room 2, last names M through Z. So the moderators are the people that are kicking it off and then sending everyone off into their breakout rooms. So we're only spending about 2 minutes. It's very fast. It's just like, welcome everyone, here's what this is. And then you're gonna go off into breakout rooms. So that's what moderator means. And session leader means that that's the person helping us to manage the logistics of like all the breakout rooms. If there's any problems, anything that you need, you can always come back to the main room for whatever reason. And then that's where me and the moderator, like me or Parag, is going to be the moderator for the allies room. And the session leader will be there to like manage any logistics. And then I'm going to be grouping you into A, B, and C facilitator groups, and I will let you know what that is after. And then for people who happen to be in group letter C, because you are the allies, I'll put you into either room 1 or room 2 for the second session. We'll figure that all out later. So one more thing. Any questions on what I like this slide before I move forward?
I think the important thing is for your facilitation group, for the focus circles, don't navigate via the event site. Follow the calendar invite that Teresa is going to send you. Is that right, Teresa?
Yes. I have holds for you, but I'm going to update the holds once I place you into the groups and we have specific Zoom links. Zoom has a limitation of how many breakout rooms you can have. That's why we have to have different Zoom links. So you will be split into 2 rooms. You only see half the facilitators because of the limitation. And we'll be updating that early next week. And then I'll be sending out all the information. So, all right. So the timeline, this is very detailed. It's going to go by fast, but essentially I'm just going to run over session 1 as an example, and then it's just rinse and repeat for session 2. We're asking you to join 10 minutes early. So like the first session would be at 12:50, you start joining Eastern time, but we're actually going to open it even 10 minutes earlier. So me and, the moderators and the session leaders will jump on first, and then you all will start jumping on that 10 minutes before. And then around, close to 1 o'clock, like all the attendees will be from the rest of the conference will be jumping in and gathering for a couple minutes. And then right at 1, the moderator, like me and Parag, will then kind of welcome, quick session overviews, only 2 minutes. And then we send you off into breakout rooms. And then you all then facilitate from there, given the guide that we have provided for you and all the outlines. You do your brief intros, your own story. That should only take about hopefully 5-6 minutes. And then you really spend the rest of the time in conversation and in dialogue and facilitating. And then 2 minutes before, so like we end at 1:45, so 1:42 or so, we're going to have this warning, Zoom room closing in 2 minutes. And this is the time for you to wrap it up and make sure it's hopefully a nice closing so everyone can kind of say their byes and thank yous before the room shuts on you, and then and then I'll go back into the main room for just like a minute where we say thank you, and then here's your break, or thank you, keynotes in a minute, right? And then people get funneled on to the next thing. So any questions on that? And it's on the slide, so you can follow along. Okay. All right. And the to-do moving on, the to-do we're asking you to do is to verify your facilitator page and headshot. So if for those logging in and attending the conference, after you register, you can access the facilitators page on the left-hand side, and then there's a profile for you. Make sure everything's accurate, including that we have the right headshot of you and it's not someone else, because we have so many facilitators, that your name, everything like that is correct, and then your bio is correct. And then for any needs to correct, revise, things that you want to change, then please email Jum Nguyen at saseconnect.org. The email's there. And then for those of you, and it's a majority of you that aren't attending the conference, And if you aren't planning to do that, we ask that you email Chum to get a screenshot. So you can email her and say, hey, I want to, verify my information. Can you send me my screenshot? And she's happy to do that for you. So, okay. So last slide, we're almost there. Don't forget to register for the conference. For those that we're offering complimentary registration for those who are hosting both focus circle sessions, which is about 29 of you. So it's kind of a lot. And any non-AWCC members that are only hosting one session, we invite you to consider purchasing a registration to support our mission. And how you do that, I've already sent the information, but go to this link and enter in this discount code. And I have a screenshot where it's right there under the tickets header. There's a box that says, enter in discount code, and that's where you do that. And it makes your registration for free. And please, this registration is only for you and for no other one else. So please don't forward this to anyone else because this is only for folks as a thank you for your time. We know we're asking a lot from you and you are doing so much for us. So we really appreciate it. Any questions on this? And then we just have a few minutes for any other feedback, questions, things like that. Parag, are we getting some questions around registering?
Yes, I am looking it up now. Aditi, I do not see that you have registered, and yeah, Lily, you are definitely registered.
Are the sessions recorded?
These are not. The workshops are, but these focus circles are definitely not because they are supposed to be confidential, right?
Great. Thanks.
And yeah, if Teresa or I forget to say that, please do pipe up and or let your folks know. I mean, they'll know because they will see that the recording button is not on. But yeah.
Great. And then for these slides that will come through, will they be from you, Teresa? Are they from?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So we're recording this after tomorrow. Can you Jessica, can you repaste the slides again just for now? I'm going to email out the recording and slides after my second session tomorrow evening, and then I'll send it out again. And I'm going to update some of the things based on our conversations today, like more discussion topics, more, guidance and things like that.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Parag.
Just so everyone does know, we actually do have over 300 we have 310 tickets that are paid, and we've got there's a bunch of freebies with facilitators, session leaders, speakers, other guests, volunteers, between all of those. So hopefully we should end up with 350 in the room, all said and done. So which matches last year, but quite honestly, given the pandemic, given Zoom fatigue, matching last year is impressive. So, the sign-in info for which one, Lily? For the actual website itself, after you register? That one, yeah, for the conference. So that's after you register, then you would click on this. On the registration site, I believe I put it into, I put it in the top line is confirmed registrants may access the site in a certain location. So it's in the registration page as well in case you lose this. Okay. And the site is pretty easy to navigate around. That's why we love this site. Unfortunately, Cisco bought it, so it's getting more expensive, and buying a startup company, they may Cisco-fy it. Who knows if it's going to remain easy to use.
No one goes on the call. It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, we should, we'll migrate to a Google product, I'm sure, before too long, right, Teresa?
We'll see, but then Google kills a lot of products too, so you don't want to depend on that too much too.
Touche.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, Dorothy, exactly.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Any other final comments, or we'll let you have a few minutes to breathe before I'm sure you all have 9 a.m.s or you're going off to lunch, something like that. So we want to respect your time.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Really appreciate your investment.
All right.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.